Being able to do area at the highest level, you should be able to now be given area and use that information to find a missing piece of the shape itself. So if I have a rectangle here and I know that the area on the inside is 20 inches squared, that's how much space there is, and I know that my length is 2, but I don't know my width, we should have enough information to get that width. So we know that the area of a quadrilateral was just the length times the width. So we can start plugging in what we know so we can solve for what we don't know. So we know that the area is 20, and that's what the A stands for. I see that my length was given to me as 2. I'm going to use parentheses here. Oops. And it looks like we don't know the width, so that's going to stay as X. Now I use parentheses to make sure this still looked like multiplication. LW, there's nothing in between, that's multiplication. So this setup needed to look that way too. Now, for those of you that have finished equations part 1, 2 times X, the opposite is dividing, and we get that X is equal to 10. And we could sort of check that in our minds. We know that 2 times 10 gives us the 20, since we know that the area of a rectangle is length times the width. Now it gets a little more complicated when you're given the area of a triangle and you need to find the missing piece of the triangle here. And that's only because the area of a triangle is slightly more complicated than squares and rectangles. If you remember from day 1, area of a rectangle is base times height divided by 2. Once again, we're going to look at our shape, figure out what we're given, and plug it in one at a time. In this problem, I know my area is 15. My base and height is our next thing to go find. And remember, we find these two pieces of information because they are connected by the right angle sign, okay? That right angle sign. So I look over here and I see that this 5 is attached to the X down here. That 8 is not a part of that right angle sign, so that 8 has nothing to do with this problem. That means my height is 5, and I don't know my base. So I'm gonna leave that as X. Base times height divided by 2. Okay, now we just have to solve for this. So I know that 5 times X is just 5X. So I'm just gonna sort of clean that up, and now we'll figure this out, okay? Now, when you have a weird fraction like this, it's nice just to get rid of whatever's happening down here. And the fraction means divided by 2, so the opposite is multiplying both sides by 2. And that cancels out here. 2 times 15 is 30. 5x, there's nothing in between, so I know that's multiplication. So the opposite is division. So the base of that triangle has to be 6 inches. All right, let's try it another. So we know that I see a triangle. So I know that the area is equal to base times height divided by 2. Just to get it all nice and set up, we're gonna go see what we know and start plugging it in. This time you know that the area is 50 inches, so I can plug in 50 for A. And now I need to go find base and height, which we know is connected by the right angle sign. So I look over here and I see the X and that base of 10 is connected. So the 7 and the 6 won't matter for this problem. 10 is my base, X is my height, 10 times X is 10X, divided by 2. Now we'll solve. Fractions mean divided by 2, so the opposite is multiplying each side by 2. Those are inverse operations, so they undo each other. 2 times 50 is 100. There's nothing in between the 10 and the X, so I know that's multiplication. The opposite is dividing. And so X is 10. The height of this triangle is also 10.